Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius. It is a Thursday edition of the show. Our, second or third of the week? I start losing track after a while. But the beauty of it is that we have another fantastic show ready to go just for you, the Pewter people out there. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is also of PewterReport.com, JC Allen. And JC, we heard the news today that Tom Brady and a lot of the starters are going to be playing when the Bucs head over to Indy for their final preseason game of the season. A lot of exciting stuff to get into. How are you doing, sir?
Doing great. Football is almost here. Last training camp of the day. I wasn't out there, but you guys are holding it down for Pewter Report. My last day was yesterday, but you know what that means, Matt, is we've got one preseason to go, and then it's regular season time. Practices change to the regular season format, and then that just ramps up the process. And I think it's 15 days after that Colts game. It's time to go. It's go time, and we're gonna get a look at some of the players who will be starting that first game of the season on Saturday, apparently.
Yes, we will. We're going to talk about all of that. We're going to talk about some other housekeeping, some stories on PewterReport.com that we wrote about earlier today and we'll continue to post throughout the day. But JC, you talked about ramping things up a little bit. And one way you can ramp things up for yourself is by drinking a Celsius energy drink, which, of course, Celsius is the providing sponsor of the Pewter Report podcast. And guys, if you don't know by now, Celsius is the best energy drink in the game. They have 7 essential vitamins and a huge variety of flavors.
Starting
you got the sparkling wild berry. You got the sparkling orange, one of my personal favorites, the watermelon, strawberry lemonade, so many different types of flavors. You also got the vibes. The vibes are very high on this show. You got the Arctic Vibe, which JC, I believe, is drinking. We'll show that once we get back onto the show itself. The Tropical Vibe, of course, one of the best in the game, and the Peach Vibe. All terrific, fantastic flavors. The other beauty of it is it gives you that essential energy, whether you're working out, got to get through a work day, whatever it might be. The best drink to have that help fuel you throughout your day is Celsius. Make sure you go to their website, hit the store locator, find out where there's a Celsius near you. You can also buy these drinks in bulk every 2-3 weeks, whatever you want. I suggest getting the variety pack because variety is the spice of life. There are multiple different type of packages that you can get, but you can get it all on Amazon. So make sure you go to Celsius.com, check out what they have to offer, and you will not be disappointed. That is Celsius energy drinks. All right, JC, let's get back to the show itself. Whoopsie daisy. There we go right there. A little bit of news that we got this morning. Obviously, there was the story yesterday that the Bucs had signed outside linebacker Genard Avery, who Todd Bowles spoke about after practice today, saying that they brought him in because he's got some good pass rushing ability and also because he can do some things on special teams. So we'll see if he makes that final roster cut. But they also said that they brought him in because they almost did it as a safety precaution where, if a player gets injured halfway through the season, you're kind of looking for that guy that you could bring in that can maybe, have an impact halfway through the season. They just wanted to get a step ahead of that. And that's why they signed Avery. But because they signed Avery, they had to waive someone else. And they waived a friend of the program, Cyril Grayson Jr., the wide receiver, with an injury settlement. Fortunately, Cyril not on the team right now, but he is dealing with an injury and, can never rule anything out. Obviously, with his career, he's been to so many different places, so many different stops, and he knows all about perseverance. So we definitely wish Cyril well, and hopefully, you never say never. He could be back on the Bucs later this season.
Yeah, like most of the guys who have so far been waived with that injury designation, if he does clear through waivers, he'll revert to the Bucs injured reserve list where he'll miss the season technically, but there is a chance, as we saw with JoJo Azugu and Jonathan Hubbard, that they could reach an injury settlement, which would mean they would agree upon a certain amount of time that the Bucs would pay him for missing those games with or time with the injury. And then after that, new rules have changed. It used to be 6 weeks, but now it's 4 weeks, where after that 4-week period plus the injury settlement timeline, he could actually come back to the Bucs. Usually, if you waive the guy with an injury settlement before the rule changes, that's it. He can't come back to your team. They've changed it over the years where it's a certain amount of time, and now that time has even lessened. So, there's a possibility he could be back with the Bucs or maybe competing somewhere else. But definitely wish him the best of luck in his career. Really came on at the end of last year and was battling, had an up and down camp, but was really, still part of that mix, at least for the very least as a practice squad spot. But Matt, the biggest thing to me telling was what Bowles said about Avery, having that guy now instead of finding him mid-season. It almost sounds like he's going to make the team as a fifth outside linebacker, which is something that we've been kind of debating. Do they keep a fifth outside linebacker? Do they keep a fifth inside linebacker? Sixth cornerback, fifth safety. But the way he talked, it sounded like that as long as, Avery picks up the playbook fast enough and has a good showing out in Indy on special teams, that he's going to be a guy who's going to be sticking around past the cuts. So I don't know if you kind of got that sense or feel yourself, but the way he worded it, a guy who could help us now instead of fighting a mid-season, well, he's going to help you for a practice in a game? Or
right.
Is he going to help you long term?
Yeah, it's a good point because and we were talking about this yesterday a little bit that, going into the season, I would have thought Bucs are going 4 outside linebackers. They already got it. Shaq Barrett, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, which we will talk about in just a moment. And then obviously Anthony Nelson. And with the signing of Carl Nassib last week, it's kind of like, all right, bada bing, bada boom, you're good to go. Outside linebacker, don't need to think twice about it. But now you bring in Avery, and it really could be a situation. Well, I don't think they're going to cut Carl Nassib because they just signed him last week. It'd be very odd to sign him and a guy that knows his defense and to just release him after a week. Anthony Nelson, we know his spot is very much secure. He's coming off a season where he had his highest career of sacks. So, I don't see anything going on with him moving there. So, yeah, I think it turns into a situation where you're going to at least bring on 5 outside linebackers for the season, because why else would you bring him in unless you want him to compete for a week? This isn't like the Patrick Laird situation where you kind of just need bodies at running back at training camp. We're talking about a guy that, as John Ledyard said, was linebacker 3 on the Steelers. So I think it's the fact that it was so surprising that he got cut that the Bucs were just like, all right, let's go get him right now.
Right, and Steelers Depot, who does phenomenal coverage, for the Pittsburgh Steelers, was like, I didn't have Avery being released on my bingo sheet today, and they were kind of shocked by it too. So he's a good player, especially he's had some special team snaps, 418 over his career, 98 last year. Most of those came on kick block, field goal block, but a bunch of them came on coverage as well, kick coverage as well. So, he can help in that department. He's had 7.5 career sacks. His best season was his rookie year, where he had 4.5 sacks, forced fumble recovery, 5 tackles for a loss. But last year he started 12 games for Philly. So having a guy who can start in a pinch if injuries do, take hold, a guy who can be someone who plays on special teams is obviously a big need for this team. If you watch the first 2 preseason games, they could definitely use all the special teams help they could get. So shout out to Charlie living his best life out in the comments.
Charlie is having a blast. I was like, what are you laughing at? And then I saw the comment, and it makes sense. So shout out to Charlie. Hope you're having a good time. I hope everyone is having a good time. And one way that you can have a better time is by helping us out and hitting the like and subscribe button. Please subscribe to Pewter Report TV. We're always churning out these podcasts, but also churning out various different videos from press conferences to other sound bites that the players have. We just put one up before about Todd Bowles talking about who's going to be playing and his overall relationship with Tom Brady, which, pretty much allowed for Brady to have a couple of days off and, be away from the team to come back with no issues there. Shout out Josh Capo up in the chat. He says, Charlie having a good trip. Very true. Someone that's not having a good trip, and this is based off of sticking with the injury conversation. This affects the Bucs for 1 week, but it's not an injury to a Bucs player. And that was the news that came out of Dallas, which their starting offensive tackle, Tyron Smith, He had a knee injury. I believe it was a torn ACL, or at least that's the report that he has.
Torn hamstring.
Sorry, torn hamstring. So either way, a torn injury that's obviously going to keep him out for the season, or at least a very, very long time. So he will not be available for the first game of the season when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers travel to Dallas to take on the Cowboys in a rematch of last year's first game of the season.
Right.
This time, though, the game is on the road for the Bucs. Listen, injuries are very unfortunate. We've seen it already with the Bucs, all the injuries that they dealt with, whether it was the corners last season or everything going on with the offensive line. So I definitely feel for Tyron Smith, and just I know people hate Cowboys fans, but when you have one of your best players get injured, that always sucks. On the flip side of it, looking through the lenses of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I mean, I'm already extremely excited for the entire defense, but specifically the pass rush. When you have Shaq and a full-blown JTS that's going to be starting on the outside, don't need to think twice about it. He's there on every single snap. Plus, Akeem Hicks and Vita Vea in the middle. I was already excited for this pass rush. And now you get Shaq and JTS against a backup offensive tackle. And Smith, again, being one of the best tackles in the league. Obviously, it's a downgrade to begin with. But, I mean, good luck to the Cowboys trying to stop, the Bucs defense, at least on the defensive line. I know the Bucs have their own issues on the offensive line, but damn, Shaq Barrett and Joe Tryon-Shoyinka getting to just pin their ears back and get after Dak Prescott. Something to monitor for that first game of the season.
Yeah, these guys should eat. Like, they really should. And it goes so much more beyond just the pass rush too. You're looking at, a team that has been one of the best, some years the best at stopping the run, and losing a guy like that to open up holes on outside runs as well is going to be a huge factor. We already know, as last season, the Cowboys abandoned the run pretty much early with Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. And looking at their team now, it looks like the whole CeeDee Lamb issue was he was clowning around and just needed stitches on his foot. So he'll probably be able to go, but they're still without James Washington and Michael Gallup, their number 2 and 3 receivers. So they're going down to their number 4 and 5 receiver. That's going to maybe 6 receiver. That's going to be playing in that game. They haven't made a significant signing of anybody to really bolster that wide receiving corp. And also, you look at it, sure, they got Dallas Schultz, but it's going to make that team so predictable and one-dimensional, where that majority of the time he's going to be looking for CD or Dallas Schultz, because these other guys.
You mean Dalton?
Dalton, yeah. Dallas Clark.
Dalton plays in Dallas.
Dalton plays in Dallas, yes. Yeah. Dallas Clark played in Dallas for a second too, I believe.
Yeah.
But we're off the rails there. So, I mean, it's just it makes that offense predictable, one-dimensional if they can stop the run, and not just the linebackers should feast, but it should cause some turnovers as well, potentially, if the guys can read the right plays and attack some of those young wide receivers that are going to be out there on the field. So huge blow all the way around for the Dallas offense, and works in the Bucs' favor.
See some fans in the chat, I believe, Tony Saylor said that he booked his trip. He's going to Dallas. He's going to be at the Bucs home opener, so that's pretty awesome. I saw someone else, Zechariah, I guess Zachariah, but spelled a little different. Zachariah said he's going to the Bucs Cardinals game on Christmas Day. So that's pretty cool. Love seeing Bucs fans travel for road games. Obviously very awesome. And we have a $5 super chat from Giovanni Perez. Giovanni, thank you so much for that super chat. He says, you guys being at practice and all, how good of a season do you think the Bucs will have if all the key players stay healthy? Well, they're already behind the 8 ball with that a little bit, because Ryan Jensen is injured, and, you got Keanu Neal, who should be back by the regular season. Same with Tristan Wirfs, but you already have guys that are injured. But if everyone is healthy, we're talking about Mike Evans, Chris Godwin goes back to form, Julio Jones is healthy for a whole season, which hasn't happened in a long time. And then you talk about the defensive side of the ball. Again, Akeem Hicks, very excited for him. He's coming off an injury. Levante David, getting up there in age, was injured, missed time last year. And we already talked about the secondary. But if everyone is healthy, I mean, that was mostly the case for the Bucs in 2020, with the exception of Vita Vea, who still got back for the NFC Championship game in the Super Bowl. You saw what it did for them there. In their first season, in a COVID season, where Tom Brady's still getting acclimated, still building that chemistry with everyone, they won the freaking Super Bowl with the least amount of time of preparation that any team ever had when a new quarterback comes to the team. So now we're talking about Brady in year 3 with an entirely healthy team around him. How good of a season can they have? They could win the Super Bowl like without question. I don't think, and that should be the expectation, even if they do deal with more injuries this year. It's Super Bowl or bust. That's exactly why Tom Brady came back. Thank you for the question, but I think it's fairly, set in stone. If everyone's healthy, it's a Super Bowl, and that's all.
Yeah, that's what they're going for. That's the goal every year. They're no longer vying for NFC South division titles, although that's a goal on the way. But the ultimate goal is Super Bowl. And as far as record goes, that's an interesting one. I'm still working through that. What I think they're going to, Matt, I'm sure you're still kind of working through that as well. But I don't think anywhere between 11 to 13 wins is out of the realm of possibility at all. I mean, I think that's kind of 11 is, I know right now the betting odds right now, I believe, Matt, are 11.5 wins over under. And I think I might take the over on that. But Matt, if you are looking for betting odds?
Of course, yeah. If you want to bet on something like that, or the number of sacks at a team, or your favorite team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is going to have, the best place to go and do that would be with MyBookie.ag. And of course, you have multiple things going on right now. You still have baseball going on, preseason football. You can bet all of it, and make sure you bet for the Bucs next game against the Indianapolis Colts. Make sure you use the promo code Pewter, and MyBookie is offering new customers 100% match bonus on their first deposit, all the way up to $1,000. That means you put in a G, you get a G back. Even if you learn from Plant City math, you can understand that. Again, use the promo code Pewter. You get that money. They'll give it right back to you instantly. There's money lines, totals, everything else in between. Get yourself a nice parlay going. Maybe do a Tampa Bay parlay. Bet on the Rays, USF Week 1, and the Bucs. I think USF is going to stink again this year. But if you're a Florida State fan or a Gators fan, or say you're a Florida State fan, bet on Florida State to win, bet on the Gators to lose, and bet on the Bucs to beat the Colts. Get a little parlay going there. So there's multiple different things that you could bet on with MyBookie, and make sure that you use the promo code Pewter and get a $1 for $1 match. That is mybookie.ag with the promo code Pewter.
Yeah. I mean, hey, talking about this championship talk right now, what the window is, maybe throw a futures bet in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Win the Super Bowl, and you never know what that money would turn out to be. There was someone who picked, I forget what it was, but picked all 4 major sports recently, the champions, and they won quite a chunk of change. So never know.
I saw another idiot that put in a bet that the Bucs are going to have the worst record in the NFL. So it was like, I think he bet $10 he'd win like $112,000 if the Bucs had the worst record in the league. So
you never know; those small bets can turn into big profits.
If anyone wants to place that bet, I will take on that bet. In other words, thank you for just giving me free money. We got another super chat from Frank G. What up, G? He says, thank you so much for the $4.99 super chat. Appreciate it, sir. He says, if the Bucs win the Super Bowl, where does Tom Brady rank among the best players in Bucs franchise history? Wow. So, good question. We had a podcast about this. I would say it was over the summer. I mean, we are still in the summer, but it was over the summer, in between like when minicamp was done with and training camp didn't start yet, and we did our Bucs all-time Mount Rushmore.
Yep.
And everyone at Pewter Report did it, and it varied a little bit, but one of the common ones was mostly like 2 offense and 2 defense, things like that, even though the Bucs are predominantly historically a defensive team. But Tom Brady was an offensive player that was on it. And I just think it shows that Tom Brady is one of those players that transcends the sport. Obviously, he's an icon for what he did with the Patriots, but he's an icon no matter what in the NFL. And the fact that he came to Tampa Bay, won a Super Bowl in his first year, and let's face it, like
COVID year.
in a COVID year, he plucked the franchise from obscurity, pretty much. I mean, they hadn't made the playoffs in over a decade. He comes in, they win a Super Bowl. Next season, obviously, they didn't get their ultimate goal, but they did win the division for the first time in a long time. So if he were to win 2 Super Bowls in 3 years, man, I mean, obviously his name's going up there in Raymond James Stadium.
No matter what.
Does he become the greatest Buck of all time? I think, even though it's only for 3 seasons, he has to be.
I think it's close. It's really close. And I mean, not only did he pluck this team out of obscurity, he plucked them from the worst winning percentage in all of North American sports, professional sports, and brought them out of there as well. Brought national attention, brought so much, different possibilities to the Tampa Bay Bucs. The COVID year, that cannot get understated too. This guy came in with a truncated training camp, no preseason, no time really to bond with his guys in the offseason. It was pretty much you come to training camp, you isolate at home, and to win a Super Bowl in that first year, if he can win another Super Bowl, I think he's already top 10 easily of greatest Bucs of all time, if not top 5. But if you win another Super Bowl for the Buccaneers in 2 and 3 years, get that NFC division title. Yeah, Matt, I think, he's a quarterback, plays ultimate position, and he's the greatest of all time in football history.
Yeah, good point from Emily here. She says, how does he not? 2 Super Bowls in 3 years? It's a lock. It's hard to argue it. Callie Bucks, though, says, why didn't that come up? Callie Bucks says, Mike Evans is the greatest Buccaneer of all time. I think Mike Evans is the most lovable Buccaneer of all time. Obviously for what he man of the people, especially for what he does off of the field, but obviously a great player on the field and future Ring of Honor member as well. It's a great argument. It's a great argument because Mike was great before Tom Brady got there and went through so many different quarterbacks. So it's very tough. But I'm loving this discussion. Love when we get the fans involved in the chat. And if you super chat us, we will make sure that we answer it right away. So we will talk about the players starting in the preseason. But again, you super chat us, we will talk about it. Z Legacy with the $5 super chat. He says, and thank you, Z Legacy. He says Super Bowl will be Raiders versus Bucs 2, of course, alluding to the original Super Bowl that the Buccaneers won when they beat the Raiders. Bucs win by 2. Book it. You're welcome. Well, the storylines, JC, would be fan-freaking-tastic based on the news from UFC owner Dana White, which I'm a big fan of the UFC, and I also like Dana White for the fact that he says what is on his mind, and he doesn't really give a damn. He'll cuss, he'll say whatever, and he pretty much said it was a done deal that Brady and Gronk were going to go to the Raiders. Someone else asked me how I felt about that. I was like, well, it was still free agency at the time. He wasn't signed with the Bucs, so like, all right, whatever. He's got to shop and see who wants him, where he wants to go. It all ended well anyway. He went to the Bucs. They won a Super Bowl. They competed last season. They're going to compete again this year. So the storyline would be great, though.
It would be.
It would be a great matchup, too. Obviously, people are very high on the Raiders this year with Devontae Adams going there, reuniting with Derek Carr. They played together in college. Obviously some changes there. I don't know, though. The AFC is tough, man. Anytime you got the Chiefs and the Bills, it's going to be, extremely tough.
It'd be interesting, too, because the Raiders' offense is more prolific than its defense. And I think that the defense for the Bucs has a really good shot at being better than the offense this year. So it'd be like that 2002 throwback where the Bucs defense versus the Raiders offense.
Yeah.
Even though Tom Brady is there and the offense is probably going to be firepower this season for the Bucs too, but you would still have that storyline to like temper back to as well from 2002. It'd be a great storyline, but I don't. It's that conference, that division, let alone the conference, is going to be absolutely bananas.
I mean, the Chargers, what they have on the defensive line with Khalil Mack and Bosa, like that's insane in its own right.
Bastion Joseph Day in the middle, holding it down.
And then the Chiefs obviously are like a huge threat every year. So, damn, I would not want to play. And Russ with the Broncos. I would not want to play in the NFC West, man. It was like a couple years ago, the NFC West was kind of like that. It was that same thing.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see who comes out of the AFC. I think the Bucs are probably lucky they're in the NFC this year because there's a much more wide open. I wouldn't say wide open, but an open path with the changes that have gone in Green Bay, the changes that have gone in New Orleans, the struggles now the Cowboys are having. Can Jalen Hurts take that next jump? And just I think it's a little bit of an easier path, but that doesn't mean anything because the Bucs have one of the toughest schedules in the league, and they've got some injury issues of their own. So it's going to be an interesting football season to say the least, Maddie.
Yes, absolutely, it will be. And Todd Bowles had some interesting things to say after practice today when he had his post-practice press conference. That's a lot of P's right there, pushing P as the song goes. But of course, one of the first things that Bowles was asked was, will Tom Brady play in this upcoming preseason game, and will any of the starters? And Bowles said, and I quote, anyone that is healthy will play. He was asked that again about a question later, and he responded the same way. Anyone that is healthy, anyone who is healthy will play. So, Tom Brady is back. Despite having a veteran off day the day before, he did participate in today's practice, Thursday's practice. And so it looks like he's going to be playing in Indy. This isn't a total surprise because Brady does actually like to play in the preseason. He played what was it, like a half against the Texans last year in the last preseason game. He also played in that first preseason game as well. So he's a guy that likes to get his reps in. Obviously, you kind of hold your breath and cross your fingers every single time he's in there. But we're going to see Tom Brady, and Bowles said it wasn't that tough of a decision. It it was just more or less they wanted to see how much work that they could get done this week. And now that everyone's here, he wants to see some of the guys, especially on the offensive line, see how they work with Brady. Again, because it's everyone's who's healthy is going to play. Does that mean Mike Evans is going to play? I highly doubt it means that Chris Godwin is participating. He did not participate in practice today. But nonetheless, you're getting TB12 live in Indy where he has a lot of history over there. And, even in the preseason, anytime that Tom Brady is playing, it's a spectacle to watch, is it not?
Of course it is. And Greg Allman, he digs through. I don't know where he gets some of the information, but he pointed out that Brady has played in every third preseason game or preseason finale since 2008 when he was. That's the last time he played when he was held out with a foot injury, and he's had at least 12 passes every year except for 2016 where he had that suspension. So he's gonna play. He's known to play. He'll probably. I don't think they're gonna play. They're gonna play in more than 2 series. I think probably gets 2 series, and Gabbert gets 2 series, and then it's going to be Trask time the rest of the way. And I think I know fans are losing their mind yesterday about Brady having an off day, but I think that was more to get Kyle Trask those extra reps. And Matt, we saw him; he got the first reps of the day out there ahead of Blaine Gabbert. So getting him reps inside in the indoor on the turf and just kind of getting used to that, I think was a big telling point that they're going to get Trask a lot of time in that game. So it's going to be interesting to see how long Brady's out there, but it's important to get him out there, I think, with that offensive line specifically. Obviously, Wirfs won't be there, but getting him out there and getting snaps with Hainsey next to Shaq and next to Goedeke and Donovan all out there, getting them on the same page, building that continuity, because that's going to be very important for the season. And you can't just kind of go into that Dallas game, no matter what it's looking like injury-wise on their side, without having kind of that expectation and knowing what you're going to get. So Brady's going to go out there. He's going to sling it. We'll probably see Evans. We'll probably see Julio. I agree. No Godwin, I don't think. No Gage, because those guys aren't 100% healthy. But it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll get some real football for at least a series or two.
Yeah, a little bit. And I'm fine with Brady playing. Like, I don't think we can wrap these guys up in bubble wrap and just hope, please be ready. And someone else made this point. Like, you see guys get injured in practice too. So it gets to the point. I understand, obviously, there's more of a risk in the preseason game because you're actually getting tackled. But, you can't coddle these people like all too much. So Brady, I'm with you. I'm fine. Like 2 series, even the first quarter, if you want to do that, let him get ready. Because he's going to be working with different guys. And that was one of the other things Todd Bowles spoke about today, that once again, offensive guard Luke Goedeke is going to be the starter for this game. I want to talk about that in just a moment, but we got a couple more super chats. So let's get to
Nice.
that. You
Loving
super
it.
chat us, we will answer it right away. So first of all, Z Legacy, again, another $5 super chat. Thank you. He says, P.S. Bucs defense become one of the best D ever to play in NFL history. Hashtag stamp year. That is a bold prediction right there. But what I will say is if they can create some turnovers, I have extremely high hopes for the defense this year. I mean, you look at the 2 preseason games, and I get it. It's preseason. But you know what? It's the Bucs third stringers going up against the Dolphins and Titans third stringers.
Right.
It's the fourth stringers going up against the fourth stringers. And you know what? Todd Bowles' defensive system and scheme prevailed both times. The defense only let up against the Dolphins field goals and 1 touchdown. And that 1 touchdown was, a change of pace. The Bucs just turned the ball over. Dolphins had it like inside the 20. They scored in the next play. Zion McCollum got burned. The game against Tennessee, again, Tennessee got the ball like right in the Bucs territory. They didn't even move it an inch. And I think that speaks to the stunts, the twists they're doing on the defensive line, and just good play from the linebackers and the secondary. They need to create more turnovers. They obviously had the turnover from Don Gardner in the last game. You got to see that going throughout the whole season, though. More picks, forced fumbles. I think they can do it, but I am so optimistic about the Bucs defense this year, JC.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. And this is going to be the first time, Matt, too, we're going to see Akeem Hicks and Vita Vea lined up next to each other in game.
Yeah, we haven't seen that really too much.
And like we've seen it in practice and what they've been able to do, in joint practices and even against their own guys. And to actually have that extra oomph and like pep in their step going in a game situation against an opponent, it's going to be amazing. And with that, we've seen what they can do for everybody else. Like the addition of Akeem Hicks, and this is nothing against Nadam Kasu because he did exactly what he needed to do. He was a run stuffer, and he could give you some pressure and some sacks. But Akeem Hicks is a different beast. Guy's 6'6", 340 pounds. He's just an absolute giant. And having him and Vita Vea next to each other, you can't single block either of those guys. You have to have that third offensive lineman at least chip, and that takes away from everything else and allows other guys to kind of do their thing. I mean, on the outside, Levante and Devin White behind them, and the pressure that they're creating is causing, plays to be made on the outside too with the cornerbacks and with the safeties because the quarterback's not having a lot of time to hold the ball and go through his progressions because it's closing in. So to see that happen in a game type situation excites me. I'm excited to see it. And I think with those guys there, it's a bold statement, but if they can stay healthy, if the defense can stay healthy, and as you said, make more turnovers, there's a possibility that they could rival that Ravens defense of the 2000s and really put their mark in NFL history. And I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility from what I've seen.
I would say that's a pretty bold prediction to rival that Ravens defense. That's like one of the best defenses of all time that I've ever seen. But hey, if they do it, shout out to them. That'd be historic to cover, of course. And you mentioned Akeem Hicks. I would just say as well, you see on the screen here, you got Vita Vea and Logan Hall. I think the addition of Hicks is going to help so much with Logan Hall for the fact that he doesn't have to be thrust into this huge amount of pressure of having to, be a impact player right away. And he's going to make splashes on this team. He just doesn't have to do it in week 1. He could really understand, the game feel and the speed that comes with, being a defensive lineman in the NFL. We have another super chat that we got to get to. It is from Abundance Magnet. Thank you so much for the $5 super chat. They say, since TB12 arrived, the Bucs value has been up too, and hasn't he made it more fun for you guys to report on a contending team these past 3 years?
Now, do you take this one? Because I wasn't here. I came here when TB12 got here, so I can't really speak on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I've only spent a couple of years covering the Bucs when it wasn't the Brady era. Started as an intern and then worked my way up to to be working at Pewter Report, and I feel very lucky, and I'm extremely thankful that I'm able to. As you cover a team, you obviously you try to be as unbiased as you can, and we always say, like, we call it like we see it. If the team's playing good, we're going to talk about why they're playing good and how they're playing so well. If the team's been bad, which is what I experienced a lot starting out, we're going to talk about them playing bad. It's just being, objective about everything. Like, you got to understand, we're not favoring people like this player over another. It's just kind of the way that we see things. Now, is it better when the team's playing better? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like if you owned a luxury, like if you owned a Gucci brand or something like that, you owned a Gucci store. Would you rather have more products sold or less products sold?
Right.
I think you'd rather have more products sold. It's obviously, when the team has success, it generates a lot more buzz and excitement around the city. So yeah, it's fun to cover a winning team. When it's a bad team, obviously you can shape things like, okay, well, at least they're going to have a good draft pick. And when there's a lot of turmoil, people seem to always gravitate towards that too. So you get clicks either way. And I would just say Bucs fans are extremely passionate. So, they love their team no matter what. But to see them witness a team that has success and has won a Super Bowl, it's really awesome to see. So, yeah, I mean, it's always, I would say it's better to cover a winning team. But, we're going to give the same, analysis and insight that we would even if it was a losing team. But yeah, it's good when the team wins. I don't think, too many people would really disagree with that.
Right. It's definitely it's a little more fun when you're not having to write about the struggles of a team more than the success.
Yeah, it's like, hey, coach, why does the team keep losing every week? You
Right.
got to ask those questions, but it's a little bit better. Like, hey, you guys won 5 in a row, and Tom Brady's breaking every record left and right. What do you see from that? Yeah,
Right.
things of that nature. So, obviously, that's interesting stuff that you can do. But one thing I do want to say is you personally, unless you're an NFL player watching this, even if you're a fan of the Bucs, you watch them every week, but you can't control whether or not, they win on Sunday or Monday or Thursday or whatever it might be. But one way that you can win and control your own destiny is by bowling and winning in those matchups. And
Ooh.
the best place to go bowling, of course, would be at Pin Chasers. And there are multiple different locations. You got the East Pasco location, Zephyr Hills, Midtown, and Veterans. They have one that is very close to the Advent Health Training Center where the Bucs have their practices, training camp, et cetera, et cetera. Love the food. Chicken tenders, very underrated. Pizza's great. The nachos are fantastic. Can never go wrong with the nachos there. And the best part about it, they have different deals literally every single night, whether it's, all you could eat pizza, all you could bowl, Dollar Miller Lights, different deals left and right. They always have charity events going on too, whether they're working with Big Brother or Big Sister. They have another one coming up on the 28th, I believe, with Ackerman's Jewelers. But check out their schedule. Go to pinchasers.net because they always have different deals, different events going on, different charity events, as I just mentioned. And it's great to go to right now, especially when it's brutally hot outside. You want to be in the AC. Well, Pin Chasers has you covered there. They're blasting that AC when you go inside and get bowling. So check out a Pin Chasers near you and go to pinchasers.net to reserve a lane or book a party. They have different deals for everyone. That is pinchasers.net. All right, JC, before we
Well, you know who likes
what's that?
to bowl a lot, right? There's an avid bowler on the Bucs team, and that's Donovan Smith. He usually holds his bowling charity every year, and he gets a bunch of the O-line guys out there. And kind of speaking of the O-line, we got a $2 super chat from Leo Gallimara talking about the O-line and how the media is making such a big deal out of it. And Matt, we're there every day. We see the media. We're part of the media. We see what's going on. I think it's more the national media that's blowing this out of proportion. I think we've been pretty consistent on our coverage about what we've seen from Hainsey and Leverett and Goedeke. But just kind of from the national media point of view, have you seen that same kind of woe is me, the sky is falling situation? Or like, what are your thoughts on the O-line in general?
Well, I would like a little more context from what Leo is trying to say. Like making such a big deal about what? The fact that Ryan Jensen is hurt? Because I think that's a huge deal. Ryan Jensen's one of the best centers in the league. Has Robert Hainsey done a really good job? Yes, he has. So shout out to Robert Hainsey for doing what he needs to do in order to, earn that starting spot. And obviously, that was another bit of news today that, JC Treader, that's been the golden word, not the golden word, but that's been like the buzzword out there. Treader. Well, it was announced today that he is retiring, so he will not be going to the Bucs. But I feel good about Hainsey. But again, replacing Ryan Jensen, I think that is a big deal. So I don't totally understand how people are like overreacting to that, because I think that's seriously important. If you were worried about the left guard competition, I think that's twofold, because one, you got to find out who the winner is going to be. And I'm not saying it would have been Stinney, but you just take a guy out of the race there because unfortunately he's out for the rest of the season. So now you're trusting a rookie that is making the transition from college to the NFL, other side of the line, tackle to guard. That's a big thing. And Leverett is still fairly new in the league, and he's playing multiple positions, and hats off to him for that. But he's never really started much. He's only, been inserted into the game here and there. So you're talking about very two unproven guys that now has to build chemistry. And luckily, you got Donovan Smith there, Rocket Gibraltar. You know what he's going to do as the starting left tackle, a guy you can rely on. But to your right, you got to deal with, again, Hainsey, who has done very well, especially blocking against guys like Vita Vea and Hicks. It's going to be extremely tough, but you're learning that now. You still got to build that continuity and chemistry. So you're talking about two guys that don't normally play these positions, and now you got to protect Tom Brady. I don't think anyone's really been overselling it. I think that's why we ask so much about it, because it's a big deal. If you can't protect Brady, he's not going to run out of the pocket like Lamar Jackson or, a lot of the more mobile quarterbacks around the league now. It's just not going to be the case with Brady.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are referencing to Dan Orlovsky pretty much kind of came out and said that O-line is really is going to really struggle to protect Brady and give him time this year. And, when I say that, I just always go look back to his teams with the Patriots. I mean, we talked about the center competition and, Dan Connolly, Ryan Wendell, Ted Karras, Brian Stork, even Dan Cope, none of those guys was higher than a 4th round pick. And a lot of those guys were undrafted free agents. You look at the guard position, he's got guys like Onwenu, who was a 6th round pick. He's had guys like Ted Karras playing guard, James Ferentz, who was an undrafted free agent. And then the biggest guy of them all, I still always revert to him, is Stephen Neal, who was a wrestler in college and didn't even play football until he got to the NFL. Now, yeah, I mean, Dante Scarnecchia, everyone likes to throw that in my face, is probably the best offensive line coach to ever do it. But I'll tell you what, Goedeke and Joe Gilbert are no scrubs at the offensive line position, and they've molded this team. You've seen what they've been able to do with the offensive linemen on this team. So I think whoever wins that job at left guard, and as you said, I haven't seen a lot of bad from Hainsey. I've seen some hiccups, but I don't seen anything that I'm like, oh man, they're in trouble. And as far as the left guard position, Brady had the 2nd fastest release in the NFL last year with the most 20+ yard throws down the field. The guy who had the first was Ben Roethlisberger, who's throwing checkdowns the whole time. So if you look at what Brady's able to do to be able to get the ball out quick enough, he can kind of cover up some of those deficiencies and some of those struggles, whether it's Goedeke or whether it's Leverett. Either one of those guys in there, I think, will there be some growing pains? Yeah, of course there probably will be. These guys are young guys who have never started a game before. But do I think that Brady can help cover up with those, with his releases, with the weapons they have on this team that are going to be able to create separation and get open quick enough for him to do so? I think so. So am I overly worried about the offensive line? No. Is it concerning? Yes. Do I think they'll have it figured out sooner rather than later? Of course.
Yeah, I fully 100% agree with you about what you said with Brady's release time. And as you said, like, he's worked with worse offensive lines, but he still relatively stays upright because of his quick release time. He knows where the blitz is coming. Pocket presence. He knows like where their weaknesses are on the offensive line and with the team. So I still think the Bucs will ultimately be a vertically based team, but I think we'll see whether it's, secondaries adjusting to that and not wanting to allow the deep ball. I do think we're going to see a little bit of a different offense this season. Not that it's going to be less efficient, but that's why you bring in Rachaad White. There's no replacing Rob Gronkowski, but you have veterans there with Rudolph and Cam Brate, and Kate Otten, I think, is a very exciting piece that we don't know exactly what he's going to be yet, but I think it's very exciting to see what he can do with this team. And we might see a lot of 4 wide that end up just being shorter passes because
Russell Gage
whether the protection doesn't hold up, or the defense schemes that way where they're not going to be able to go down the field, they're still going to attack. They're just going to do it in a little bit of different ways than maybe we've seen over the last 2 years. There's no problem with that. It's just, I don't know, it's just different.
And you still have your bookend tackles, so you're good there, So, I mean, that's the biggest point is hold the point of attack on the outside. I know everyone's like, oh, Brady's weakness is the interior pass rush. Name me a quarterback whose weakness isn't the interior pass rush.
Yeah.
And he's always finds the way to step up in that pocket. And everyone wants to go back to that 2007, 2018 Super Bowl losses to the Giants when they kind of beat him within. You don't think he's learned? I mean, this is Tom Brady here. He's learned from those situations. So I think they'll be fine. They'll adapt to it. Gage and Godwin in the slot at some point. I mean, these guys have been electric catching the ball. Obviously, we know Godwin's history, but Gage, Matt, has looked really, really good and in sync. So those quick hitches, those quick little crossers and different things they can do, I think they'll be fine.
Let's talk about a couple of the different position battles that not only are we going to be paying attention to when the Bucs play the Colts on Saturday, but Todd Bowles was asked about it too. Just some of the other, spots up for grabs, if you will say. Here's Bowles talking about a couple of positions that he'll be paying attention to.
Left guard, there's a ton of guys at the receiver spot. Obviously, corner spot is yet to be determined. Guarding and backing up, inside backer, and a few more special teams players. So we're looking at a lot of activity.
Not sure if that video cut out a little bit, but he said offensive guard, which we just talked about with Goedeke, and obviously Leverett still in the running too. Wide receiver, which we talked about a ton. He also talked about the cornerback position, though. And he said not just like the starter outside of Carlton Davis, but like the backup corners too. They still need to figure that out. He also talked about inside linebacker and then, of course, special teams. So, JC, let's start with the cornerback room. And we talked about it a little bit yesterday because if you didn't check out yesterday's show, I do recommend it. It was myself, Scott Reynolds, and Casey Hudson. We each came up with a couple of players that are on the bubble that we think should make the team or is making a good case for it. And a couple corners got brought up. One of them was Don Gardner, who we mentioned earlier. Gardner almost had an interception in the Miami game, and then, of course, had the interception in the Tennessee game. We unfortunately don't have the Tennessee one, but we do have the almost interception that he had against Miami. And then I brought up Rashard Robinson. I just think when a friend of the program, Cyril Grayson Jr., and friend of the program, D. Delaney, both say that he's the fastest guy on the team. When he mixed it with the coverage that he's had here in training camp, I think he's a guy that you at least got to find a roster spot for. Those are some of the guys. And then obviously there's the battle between Jamel Dean and Sean Murphy-Bunting, who's going to be that second cornerback that's lining up on the opposite end of the field of Carlton Davis.
Yeah, I think SMB, they've given every opportunity for him to succeed. And they know what Jamel Dean can do. SMB has played mostly in the slot the last couple of years. Obviously got injured last year and wasn't the same player. So I think they're giving him every opportunity to say, hey, let's see what you can do. And if not, Dean's going to be probably the guy I think they'll go with on the outside. That fifth cornerback spot, because Zion McCollum, I think, will occupy the fourth one, is very intriguing. D. Delaney, obviously, was a Bruce Arians favorite last year. We're also D. Delaney. What's he still doing here? But he's really come along, and he had one of the best early summers out of anybody on the team as far as mini camps and OTAs go. Didn't quite translate all the way, but he's really started to turn around. I think the last couple of games, and that Tennessee Titans game, he had a really good game as well. So I think that it's really coming down to the battle between him and Rashard Robinson. and ultimately special teams is going to rule the day. We know that they're going to whichever one of those guys can perform on special teams is probably going to end up with that fifth spot. I don't know right now if they're looking at keeping a sixth cornerback, just because of the way that they're using the corners specifically as outside guys and not as inside guys at all. I mean, Delaney's gotten a few snaps there, but pretty much every player has been taking those snaps on the outside at cornerback, and they've been using those safeties in the nickel position. So I don't know if you necessarily need to go six deep at the cornerback spot, but Don Gardner has certainly made a case, and ever since he came out PUP, which he started early on in camp, he's really showed out that he can make plays. He's learning the defense fast, and he's getting it down. So he could disrupt. I know they paid Kyler McMichael significantly more money to sign here. He just hasn't looked as good as Gardner. So at the very least, I think Gardner is an extreme possibility, if he can make it through waivers to come back on the practice squad. But as far as that fifth spot goes, Matt, I think D. Delaney's got the inside track. He played less snaps at cornerback than Robinson, albeit only 7 snaps. But he also, interestingly enough, he played 3 more snaps on special teams, or 2 more snaps on special teams, 13th, Robinson's 11. And that's kind of Robinson's, spot. But it's really going to come down to what happens on Saturday. And we know that he's the fastest guy on the team, according to some of the players on the team. And, that gunner spot is still wide open there. So I think that's one of the biggest battles between the starting spot, which I think Dean still ends up getting that. But D. Delaney, Rashad Robinson for that fifth cornerback spot is going to be really interesting to watch. And keep your eyes peeled on special teams, guys. I always tell people it's not a time to go to the bathroom in preseason, because you want to see who's out there, especially on those first team special teams units to start the game. That might give you an inside track to see who the Bucs think, is going to stick around of those backup positions.
Yeah, Delaney, obviously, starting out, even if you go all the way back to mini camp and OTAs, he was looking pretty good. And early on in training camp, apparently we do also have the interception by Don Gardner. So shout out to him for making that play. But I would say he cooled off a little bit in terms of the splash plays and things going on like that. Where Robinson, if you remember, he was out for the beginning of training camp. And I think that's going to be the biggest issue for him, because when he was in there, he was covering very well. And, again, those one-on-one battles where you're not supposed to win, it's supposed to go to the wide receiver. He was doing the best out of all the corners, all of them. I'm talking about even the starters and everything like that. So I just think even Robinson, he didn't practice today. Maybe it was just a precautionary type of thing, but he's fighting to make this team. It's not a guarantee. And I don't know if he could always fully be healthy. I do agree. I think it's Jamel Dean's job. It was interesting hearing from Sean Murphy-Bunting today. He said that, he's obviously had some injury issues the past couple seasons. He said for the first time since he first joined the Bucs when he got drafted, he feels as good as he did then. And I think he was just talking about from a health standpoint. So that's good to see if he's fully healthy. We haven't really seen him make too many plays. He did have an interception today in practice, though. So maybe the wheels are starting to turn and he's really starting to get something going, because he is going to be on this team regardless of if he's the second or the third corner. Another position that Todd Bowles spoke about was inside linebacker. And we talked about Grant Stuard a lot yesterday, so we don't need to mention him a ton, but Olakunle, Fatukasi, Todd Bowles had mentioned. I also really like J.J. Russell. They're obviously not going to keep 6 inside linebackers, but it is one of those things. Do they keep a 5th inside linebacker? If they really love Grant Stuard, who just came back to practice, he practiced 2 days in a row now. If they really love Stuard at special teams, can Fatukasi still find a way to make this team? I think it's possible. But the best thing he had going for him was the fact that Stuard wasn't playing. And now that Stuard's back, there's obviously a lot of issues coverage-wise. Is that enough to ensure Fatukasi gets a spot on this roster?
I'm kind of leaning toward Fatukasi over Stuard at this moment right now. I think he's not only has he shown out on special teams. I mean, he had the second most special team snaps, 13 snaps against the Titans, and also had a tackle as well. But he's also shown that he can be a legitimate viable option at linebacker, more so than Stuard. I'm not saying this guy's going to be an all-pro anytime soon or even reach that level, but we've seen him, show off some speed. We've seen him show off great play recognition. He's made interceptions and pass deflections in practice. And I think sacks in the games and back-to-back games and quarterback hits. So I think that he's shown that if you're going to keep a guy who can show it on special teams, which we know Grant Stuard was one of the best last year, but Fatukasi has still been able to, kind of do his thing there so far in the preseason. If he has another good showing on special teams and then in cleanup duty, I think that there's a chance that he might get that spot over Stuard. And maybe they try to sneak Stuard back on the practice squad. But right now, I think with the injury history of Stuard, obviously missing some time last year, missing some time this year, I think that the coaching staff might have kind of moved Fatukasi ahead of him. I don't know, though. We'll see.
We will see. And when you are watching the Bucs Colts game this Saturday, make sure that when you're watching, you could pick some over-unders. You can pick some head-to-heads. The best place to go and do that is with Underdog Fantasy. Before we talk about the pick'ems and head-to-heads, got to tell you guys about Best Ball Mania 3 and the $10 million in prizes that they have going on. You have 3 weeks to sign up for Best Ball Mania 3, so make sure you get it going sooner rather than later. It is the easiest place to play fantasy football at Underdog Fantasy. You draft your team for Best Ball Mania 3, and there's no in-season management. You get the optimal score each week of the season. And, of course, you have a shot at over $10 million in total prize money. Head to UnderdogFantasy.com or the App Store right now and sign up with the promo code Pewter. Underdog is going to match your first deposit up to $100. Again, Underdog Fantasy, sign up with the promo code Pewter. Draft your Best Ball Mania 3 team today. If you learn from Plant City Math, you can understand what matching your deposit means. And if you don't know about the pick'ems, once again, it's one of the easiest ways to get some action in on the NFL. You just pick over or under on your favorite or least favorite player stats. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single night. Underdog keeps it super simple with their easy-to-use website and mobile apps. Pick between 2 and 5 players to fill out your pick'em slip. Get every pick right. Take home some cold, hard cash. They even have special lines for the preseason, so keep an eye out for that. Use the code Pewter. Get your first deposit matched up to $100. Again, Plant City Math. Put in a deposit of $100, you're getting another $100, and you'll get that match by Underdog Fantasy. Make sure you head over to Underdog Fantasy. Use the promo code Pewter and start picking those teams for Best Ball Mania 3 and start picking your over-unders and head-to-heads. And PewterReport.com is also going to be doing their own leagues this season. So make sure you email Scott at SR@PewterReport.com. You can email me at Matt@PewterReport.com. If you want to email JC, you could start your own league too. I know fans have started already emailing Scott. I've gotten a couple emails about it. We're going to be doing an Underdog Fantasy League, and I'm very excited to get involved with it. We want the fans to get involved as well. So Underdog Fantasy, promo code Pewter.
The fun thing is the over-unders too. That's a lot of fun.
Yes.
It's a lot of fun. It's more than just fantasy football. Like the over-unders and the pick'ems are a ton of fun and a quick way to win some money with that multiplier situation they got there too.
Yeah, absolutely. So make sure you check that out. JC, as we wind things down, I don't know if there's anything specifically that you're going to be watching for this game on Saturday and anything that you really want to see, or we did cover a lot of things today.
Yeah, pretty much the cohesiveness of the line. How does that look? How does Goedeke look right there next to Donovan Smith and Robert Hainsey? Again, Robert Hainsey some more. I'm not sure DeForest Buckner's playing, but against a guy like him, I want to see how those two guys hold their own. Special teams, I won't be going to the bathroom during special teams because I want to see who's out there. Maybe give us an inside edge of who might be out there. Julio Jones. I mean, we didn't really talk about Julio, but I want to see Julio Jones out there with Brady, see what that connection's like. I want to see how the defense performs at fully as a unit out there. Looks like everyone's going to be playing. There's no one on the defense that's really injured right now besides a Keanu Neal, so we might not see him. And Logan Ryan, I think, is a question mark. But still, we figured that Mike Edwards and and Antoine Winfield Jr. would be the base safeties out there when they're, in their normal 3-4 alignment package. So I'm excited to see that too. There's a lot to look for, especially now that the starters are playing. Before, it's just like, all right, let's see how the backups do and see if anyone can earn a spot. But with the starters out there, it's going to be so much more fun to watch those, 2 series or half or whatever they play, to kind of see how this team is coming together, how they've come together. And Bowles spoke about that from day one of training camp to the final day today. He's seen growth and improvement, and that's what you want to see. And I'm excited to see that on the field from this team in a game type situation and not just a practice.
Yeah, I'm just excited to see the starters again. We're going to see the Tom Brady to Mike Evans connection. Like you said, Tom Brady to Julio, going to be super cool. I'm really pumped to see, Shaq Barrett get after the quarterback, Devin White and Levante David in the middle. I want to see someone get a turnover on defense. I want to see Carlton Davis make the damn catch this time, or Jamel Dean make the damn catch this time. We'll see how much they play, but it will be exciting. I think there will be an opportunity because let's remember, Matt Ryan's in his first year with the Colts, so there's still going to be that communication aspect of it. So I think it's a great opportunity. Seeing Antoine Winfield Jr. in the slot and just overall the defense creating some turnovers. Again, that's what we were missing from Levante David and Devin White. Hopefully we do get it this season. So this is a reminder to everyone watching. We will have another podcast. This is our last one of the business week, I guess, if you want to say. But yeah, training camp as well. We will have one Saturday night after the game, about 45 minutes to an hour. It always varies depending on who we get to talk to and, our stories that, of course, are coming up. But it will be me, myself, Scott, JC will be on as well. We'll be breaking down everything that we saw from the game. So make sure to check us out on Saturday night right here on YouTube. Again, want to remind everyone, please like and subscribe. If you like the show, if you like the videos we put out, subscribe to Pewter Report TV. Help us help you, and help you help us, whatever that saying is. We really appreciate it. Yeah, thanks everyone for the super chat. That was freaking awesome. And again, if you do super chat, we will make sure we get to your question right away. And I think it makes for some good discussion, some good back and forth. So
a lot of good stuff.
It really is great. And we thank you all for it. So for JC Allen, I'm Matt Matera saying thank you everybody for watching and listening. And we will see you on Saturday for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.
Later, guys.